Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. Welcome to the October meeting of the CCC TUG. We had double the AI songs, courtesy of Suno, for double presenters today with Ken and Kevin Flerlage. They're going to show us how to do some wickedly cool stuff in Tableau just for Halloween. And we have quite a packed agenda. We have just a couple of announcements. Then we will get to the Flerlage Twins doing wickedly cool stuff. Followed by an office hours with frighteningly easy tool tips, which will be courtesy of Kim Coots, one of our co-leads. And then we'll wrap up with details on our next meeting, which is going to be on December 5th. So first announcement, IronViz qualifiers are going on right now. If you want to be on stage in San Diego potentially, or even if you don't, you can enter IronViz, right? It's a great learning experience. Even if you don't end up on stage, you will learn tons just by going through the qualifier. So that's open now. The theme is entertainment. So it's kind of carte blanche. Do anything that entertains you. So really hope to see some of you all in the qualifiers. You can get more information at tableau.com/ironviz. And that's also where you would submit your viz by October 30th on Halloween. And if you're thinking, where might I be able to source some entertainment data? Data Plus TV is still going on. So that's a huge data source put together by David Kelly. It's tons of IMDb data, all about your favorite shows, their ratings, their votes, the cast, the crew, awards. There's tons of information in there. So even if you don't want to use it for IronViz, it's a super fun data set to jump into. And then last thing is, I don't know if you all have seen this, there is a new app for Tableau in Teams. We just kind of started using it at MiraCosta. Super cool. You can favorite your dashboards and get all of your pulse metrics right in Teams. So you almost have like your own little landing page. There's tons of cool functionality. Your IT team just kind of has to set it up so that it talks to your Tableau cloud or server. And then you can get all of your Tableau fun right in Teams. Okay, with that, we are going to turn it over to Ken and Kevin Flerlage, who probably need no introduction, but I'm going to give them one anyway. They are Tableau evangelists and data visualization consultants at Moxie Analytics, where they help their clients solve problems with data. They are both longtime ambassadors and visionaries. Ken is in the Visionary Hall of Fame. Kevin is right behind him. He's on his way as a 5-time visionary. They have a website, flerlagetwins.com, which we'll put in the chat, where they post tons of awesome blogs full of resources, tips, tricks, anything you want in Tableau. It's where I learned tons of stuff in Tableau, so make sure you check it out. And to top it off, they're just really fun people. They're really fun, really kind, really generous with their time, and we are so happy and excited to have them. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing screen and I'm going to turn it over to them.
That is an incredible Photoshop job you did, by the way.
I thought that was the real image from your vacation. To the overlook hotel.
Oh, all right. Can you see a blank screen in PowerPoint?
Yes.
Yes, perfect. Just need the verbal. All right. So we are going to be doing our, thank you for the wonderful introductions. Thank you for having us. We're going to be doing our Tableau Conference 2024 version of how to do cool stuff in Tableau. I think this is the 3rd year we did it. On the fly, I just made sure I added that in for you, you all, since you called it wickedly cool stuff in Tableau, but don't get your hopes up. It might not be that great. Just some quick introductions, although Lisa did a great job. I'm Kevin Flerlage. This is my identical twin brother, Ken Flerlage. We run the website, flerlagetwins.com. We have, I think, 405 blog posts on there. I'd say 400 of them are specific to Tableau. We're consultants at Moxie Analytics. Moxie Analytics is a company of 5, actually now 6. Yeah, Ken and I focus solely on Tableau, and I'm a 5-time visionary and Ken's a Hall of Famer. He's one of 23 in the entire world, so kudos to Ken. At Moxie Analytics, we do data stuff. We focus our energies all on Tableau, so we actually build dashboards, and we do sort of advisory type stuff as well through Fractional Data Hero, where you can kind of rent us for X number of hours a week or a month, and we'll do whatever Tableau related stuff you want. Tableau Lifeline is a 1 hour, kind of like, who you're going to call thing. If you have a sticky problem, you can call us. And then we do lots of Tableau training and non-Tableau training. Not really non-Tableau training, but since it's almost Halloween, if you're looking for scary, good Tableau training, raise your hand like the zombies are. We do beginner training, we do advanced training. There's one of those publicly coming up in January, and lots of cool stuff. I honestly don't know that there's another course like it out there where we get into a lot of advanced topics. And the advanced courses I've seen in Tableau don't really touch on half of this. So I think it's one of a kind. And then we do our non-Tableau training is a tool agnostic training called the Softer Side of Data Visualization, where we talk about data storytelling, really understanding, being empathetic with your stakeholders, and then get deep into data visualization best practices. In our company in general, we just do data stuff for money, data governance, management, data viz, obviously, strategy, etc. At the Tableau conference, this is a picture from Tableau conference 2023. We were able to take this selfie right before we went on stage. And it looks like there's like 20,000 people out there. There's not that many, but it was a great crowd. But at the conference in 2023, we told the story. And I should note, Ken and I always like to have a little bit of fun when we start off a presentation. So this is the fun part. At 2023, we told a story about us at the Tableau conference in 2022, where Ken and I hung out with Serena Roberts, and Serena Roberts is the co-founder of Moxie Analytics, and actually it's kind of where our relationship all started and how we ended up joining with them. But when we were at Tableau conference 2022, we went for this long walk, and then inevitably this long walk, it was like a 2-hour walk. We thought we were walking back to our hotel in Vegas. 3 blocks looks like, it looks like a 2-minute walk, and it ends up being a 2-hour walk. But Serena ends up stepping and completely wiping out, right in the middle of the walk. And what it was is she actually stepped and slipped on a ham sandwich. Truthfully, in the middle of Vegas, she wiped out on her rear on a very greasy ham sandwich, extra mayo. And she kind of ended up like this. So at the conference in 2023, we went on another, we'll just say the Moxie saga continued. The Tableau conference in 22, we were actually looking for a special cocktail called the Bramble, right? And in 2022, we never found it. So in 2023, we decided we were going to go out and find that stinking drink. And we had a few people join us this year. It was Josh, George, and the Sarah Bartlett. If you know Sarah, another 5-time Tableau visionary. So we all went out on a walk, and we got to a bar, and we went into this bar and slide up. And Sarah said, "Hey, kind sir, can you make us 6 Brambles?" And the bartender looked at us and said, "No, I can't make it. I don't have the stuff to make the drink for you." And then we went to another bar, and she said, "Hey, can we get 6 Brambles?" And that bartender also said, "No, I can't make it." So we went into bar after bar after bar, and with every single bar and every bartender, we got the same answer: no, no, no. And that last guy is really mad. You see how really angry he is. So finally, a nice bartender said, "Hey, the reason we can't make that drink is because we don't have any blackberries." It was, I think, at that time, April or May, and they were out of season. And he said, "Hey, we can't get any blackberries, so we can't make that drink." So Serena has the idea that, hey, if a bar doesn't have blackberries, then maybe a restaurant does. And we looked next door, and it was like, the sun going, oh, like that. And there was the Hell's Kitchen, Gordon Ramsay's famous restaurant. So Serena goes into the bar area of the Hell's Kitchen restaurant and thinking, well, if they're a restaurant, they're going to have blackberries. And she slides up and says, "Hey, is there a chance you can make a Bramble?" And some rando over here says, blackberries are out of season, silly, as she's laughing. So Serena says, let me educate you on the global supply chain. And, 2 hours later, I think Serena was satisfied. Rando left. Bartender slides up to Serena and starts to whisper. And we're watching this from afar. And the bartender tells her about this bar off the strip that was where the bartenders go. It was the bartender's bar. It's where bartenders went to drink when they were off work. So we hop in an Escalade. I think this is, a Highlander, but it's the best I could find. And we go to this bar off strip, and expecting to be disappointed, I just walk in by myself. And I say, sir, is there any chance you can make a bramble? And much to my surprise, he said, of course. So I said, we'll take 6. So here is us enjoying or getting ready to enjoy the bramble with all 6 of us. Finally, sweet victory. This is 2 years in the making. There's a lot more of this story. And I say message us for the director's cut, but I say we just tell you the full story. We did this presentation about an hour and a half ago, and we did not tell the true story, but let's do it here. The truth is, I took 1 drink and everybody else took 1 drink, and I looked at Serena and we both looked like this after 1 drink of this thing. And I was really afraid that this from last year was going to turn to this. This is probably why Tableau doesn't want me to share this at the Tableau conference. So what we learned was that this cocktail and this bar specifically is famous for adding absinthe to their drinks. If you don't know what absinthe is, it's nicknamed the Green Fairy. And it has, some pretty well-known side effects. Yeah. All right, done. And the main one, most of those weren't really side effects of the Green Fairy, but the main one is acute and auditory visual hallucinations. It's really well known for people hallucinating off of it. All right, moral of the story. Nobody got sick. Everybody had a good time. It just took us about 2 hours to get back to normal and not feel ill. But the moral of the story, hang out with us at the Tableau conference, and maybe you'll be in our 2025 opening to our presentation. All right, silliness aside, we're going to be talking about how to do cool stuff in Tableau. We're going to be doing some tips, tricks, and techniques. I think this is our 3rd time in a row doing the cool stuff in Tableau presentation at the conference. Sure, we'll do it again next year. And it just gives us the ability to do some quick tips or more drawn out techniques, just kind of free. I'm assuming we're being recorded, so you can catch it here, or you can watch it, the Tableau conference presentation on Salesforce Plus. All the content related to this presentation is at flerlagetwins.com/coolstuff2024. Lots of different blog posts and references there. And we just want to say thanks to an awesome community. All these tips were either inspired or some of them we got directly from folks on this list. So we just want to say thank you before we press on. All right, let's go. I'm going to jump in first and do a section, and then Ken's going to do 2 different sections, and then I'll finish up the presentation. All right, so we're going to do some cool stuff just to keep things simple. So it'll be a little bit of build up for some of these, but we'll show how simple some of these things are. So let's imagine we have this data set that is just looking at, it just has an order number and a profit value, right? So how might we visualize this? Well, we might do a dot strip plot, right? So we just have a circle mark for every single order and every order number. And I think this kind of gives us an idea of distribution, but we get so many dots stacked on top of each other. Let's see, how many are within $50? That's 26 different dots. And then I don't know how many are over here. Only 25. So 26, more than half are in this area right here. So it's kind of hard to see. So if I were to do this, I probably wouldn't do a dot strip plot. I'd probably do a jitter plot. We can do that with a hidden function in Tableau called random. And if I do just an inline calculation of random, we can spread these dots out, right? And we can now kind of get access to all those dots. We can still see a heavy distribution over here, but we can actually get a cursor over them and interact with each of them by doing this. The problem with the random function, it doesn't work with all data sources. It doesn't work with live data sources, and it only work with extracts or file-based data sources. So ultimately, when I've done my work, I almost always run into not being able to use random. So when that occurs, I always go over to Jeff Schaefer's blog posts on his website, Data Plus Science, and I look at this 10-year-old blog post about methods for creating jitters in Tableau. And so how do we do that? Well, it's all about creating these sort of pseudo random numbers. And it takes two calculations. First calculation is random number. Jeff's clearly much smarter than me because I have absolutely no idea what this is doing. But I just copy it from his website. And then you take that random number and you put it into a new calculation called random int. And I really don't know what it's doing either. It's, raising something to the power times 100, whatever. I don't understand. I understand the math. I don't understand what it's actually doing. Who cares? We're just going to put it on our view up here on rows. And then it's a table calculation. So I have to go tell it how to compute. If I tell it to compute by order number, we get that same sort of randomization that we showed with random, right? But you can see, like, I had to go to Jeff Schaefer's website. I had to copy two different calculations. I have to create those two calculations. Then I have to put it on here. Then I have to set it to compute in a way. And Ken wants to rename this section instead of keeping it simple, call it Kevin being lazy. And it kind of is. I call it being efficient, but I get lazy and I don't want to do any of that. So I'm going to cheat. I'm going to put order number up here on rows. And obviously that's not what we want because it's sort of giving our order numbers by rows, but I'm going to double click on this and I'm going to do a mathematical function on our order number that makes no sense. And I'm going to do sine, like sine and cosine. And this is essentially going to create the same type of randomization that we did before by taking the sine of an order number. And that's like 2 clicks instead of like 12. So I do that all the time. All right. Here is a visual that I created for Makeover Monday. It's New Year's resolutions, and it looks at the differences. It shows the values for men and women. So I'm showing the actual differences. So if we were to look at wanting to do more exercise, well, we can see men, only about 49% of men wanted to, and about 61% of women did. So I chose to just show the differences. Doesn't really matter. The point of this is that it's in percentages, right? 49%, 61%, but the data structure was in actual integers. It wasn't in, it wasn't 0.49, it was just 49. And the right way to solve this and make it a percentage would be to take that number and divide it by 100. But again, I guess I was lazy on this one. And I just wanted to just make this number display as a percentage, even if it isn't. So we can do that. I'm just going to pick these male and female figures and right click, go to default properties and number format. You see we have this custom number format with no decimal places. We have this fields down here I don't think people use very often, prefix and suffix. Well, if I want to make it look like a percentage, all I got to do is put a percentage in that suffix and it's going to display with a percentage. It's still a number. It's not a string. You can still do math on it, but it just adds that percentage after it. In fact, if you were to look at Tableau's currency formatting, so let's just format this currency. And if I went to format and went to currency, you can see all currency does is add a dollar sign, right? You see it changed to a dollar sign. I could delete that and I could put in, money or whatever. I can put in whatever I want in this prefix and suffix. And this becomes really handy in a handful of different use cases. This is one that I've done in the past where I'm looking at different countries and we look at the population from one time frame to another, in this case 1950 to 2021, and we see that, say, for India, the population has grown 4 times, right? 4 times the population in 2021 than it was in 1950. Jordan, 25 times. I like this ratio. I think it tells a lot, but what I'd like to do is format it a little bit differently to make it even clearer. So I'm going to right click, go to default properties and number format. And in the suffix, I'm just going to put space and a small x, and then it's going to display it as 25 times the population. I just think it adds just a little bit of understanding. That's what we do in data visualization. We try to, what Steve says, the most understanding in the least amount of time. And I think that helps drive home that point. And again, it's just a formatting thing. It's the number is still a number, and you can do math on it, but it's just formatting that with the next. You don't have to create a calculation and make this a string to put that X behind it. Now, there's more things we can do with formatting, and one of them is what we call custom formatting. This is that same resolution data, and I just visualized it in a slightly different way. It's here I'm using a diverging bar chart. So what I did is, we have these values for each one of these questions. We have these positive values. So I think I said 61% of females wanted to do more exercise, where 49% of males wanted to do more exercise. We see that 49% of males here, but for females, it says it as negative. The reason it shows it as negative because I made it show as negative, so that bar would go to the left. And that's basically how we create a diverging bar chart. One value is going to the left, one value is going to the right. So I added this negative value, and because I made it a negative, the bar goes to the left, but also the axis shows as a negative. Well, that doesn't make sense. We are not looking at negative 61% of females. We're looking at 61%. So if I don't direct label these bars and I do want to leave the axis, I have to do something with this axis to make it not show a negative. One of the things we can do is to correct this is with custom formatting. So I'm going to right click on this axis and choose format. We'll go to axis here. Sorry, I should have shut that down, but we'll go with it now. If I go to the axis, we can go, and I've set this to percentage. Then I'm going to click over to custom, and it just says 0%, nothing fancy. But what you should know in the custom formatting window is when you put a semicolon, everything before the semicolon represents a positive number. Everything after the semicolon represents a negative number, and everything after a second semicolon represents a 0, right? So before the semicolon, positive, after the semicolon, negative, after that next semicolon, the 0 value. So if we want to change this negative percentage to just be displayed as a positive percentage, even though it is in fact a negative percentage, because I made it one, all you got to do is delete the negative from there, and this now shows as a positive percentage. And in fact, if we don't want to show a 0 at all I got to do is, I think Ken is kind of lame. He's kind of a 0. So we could change that 0 to Ken. Or that's pretty silly. Maybe I just hit a space bar and we can get rid of that 0. So I can do the same thing on this one. Format, axis, custom, 0%, colon, 0%, colon, space. And we can get rid of the zeros and make these negative percentages appear to be positive percentages. Now, those are somewhat unique use cases, but I use this next one probably in every single dashboard I create. So let's look at this chart first. So this chart is looking at sales versus target. And if they exceed the target, they show in blue. If they're still below the target, they're red. And then we have this label here that says how they relate back to that target. So this one's 44,000 over the target, where this one's 67,000 under the target. So how might we create these labels for these bars? Well, we'd probably start by doing the math, right? So let's look at the sum of sales minus the target. This is already an aggregate. So sum of sales minus the target. And then if you look, these numbers are all positive numbers because I got the arrows to tell me if they're positive or negative. So we got to take the absolute value of that, right? So that would be the next step. Let's take the absolute value. And then I got to think about how I create those up and down arrows. Well, you can bring in ASCII characters, or these, some people call them alt code characters, right? So I would say if that difference is 0, then we won't put anything. But if the difference is greater than 0, we'll put an up arrow. If the difference is greater than or less than 0, we'll put a down arrow, right? And so then we can start to build this thing. So let's put this, let's go to there, put sales minus target on there. And then we'll put this arrows on here, and shoot, they put them on 2 different rows, and now they're white, so they're kind of hard to see. So I'm gonna cut this, put it up there. All right, we finally did it. Truthfully, we can do this in one step. We can do this in one step. So if we just take this, this sales, the absolute value, and we go to default properties. Actually, I want this one. Sorry. Take this first one. Let's go to default properties, number format. We've set a custom formatting with no, as currency with no decimal places. Let's click over to custom. You're gonna see a bunch of stuff here. But the key thing is we look for that semicolon. So this is the default, this is the positive format, excuse me. And this is the negative format. You can see the parentheses to represent a negative value. So in front of the positive ones, I'm going to press and hold the Alt key and just type 30. That's going to give me an up arrow. I'm going to replace this parentheses with Alt 31. That's a down arrow, and get rid of the other parentheses. And now we've built that formatting right into that calculation. All I got to do is drag it to the shelf, and it's going to label it naturally with those up and down arrows. We don't have to create calculations to do this or to take the absolute value at all. We can do it all in one single calculation. Now, no matter where you drag this calculation, it's going to use an up and down arrow for your positive and negative values. So I mentioned you can do alt codes or ASCII characters, whatever you want to call them. And one of the cool things you can do, if you didn't know, is you can actually bring in colored alt code or ASCII characters. There are a handful of circles that you can bring in color, and you can see it right here in the calculated field. When have you ever seen any color in a calculated field other than the field types? But you can actually bring in colored ASCII characters. I think there's 8 or 9 colors you can bring in: green, yellow, a bunch of them. And we can do our labeling instead of coloring the bars. We can just do this pre-colored circle and bring it to our rows. I can never grab this little guy, and we can kind of show good and bad in a totally different method by building that right into the calculation itself. All right, I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to let Ken go for it.
All right.
Did I literally take 30 minutes? We're going to be way behind, folks.
Take your time.
That super nice introduction that Lisa did. It's all her fault. All right. Can you see Tableau?
Yes, we can.
All right. So I'm going to steal Kevin's thunder. He's got a section coming up called Cool Stuff That's Random. I'm going to do Cool Stuff That's Random first. I swapped this out, so this is slightly different than what we did at TC. So I'm going to give you just a handful of different random tricks that I think are kind of cool. We're going to start off with some filtering stuff. So if you ever have a chart like this is Kevin's son's bowling team from last year. We can see each player, their matches, their opponents, the dates, things like that. A lot of times when you have date-driven stuff like this, you want to filter down to maybe by default you want to filter to some, well, let's get to the defaults here in a minute, but you might want to be able to filter by the dates. So we do individual dates, we say all, we show that filter, and then you can select, which ones you want, right? But a lot of times you just want to default something to the last date in the data set, right? I'm guessing we all wanted to do that at some point. And it's tricky to do that. You end up with dynamic parameters and all this stuff. But there is this little tip that I did not even know existed until Kevin told me. At the bottom of this dialog box, filter the latest date when the workbook is open. When the workbook opens, even with new dates come in, it will automatically filter to the last one. We can also do that with different date levels. So if we had month and year and we chose filter the latest date, it'll automatically go to the last month, right? So really handy for just automatically jumping to the last date. Here we have Superstore stock prices. These are fake stock prices for Superstore, but this looks sort of like what you'd see for a stock chart on the web or something like that. And those charts have this handy little thing where you can say, show me 3 months, show me 6 months, show me a year, right? But with Tableau, we have to do this date range filter, and getting it to land on, last year or whatever is a little bit difficult, So there's this very unused feature, browse periods, that allows you to do exactly that. If we change this filter to browse periods, we just get these predefined periods of time to give us just a view over a period of time if we don't care about those exact start and end dates. So that's a really handy little tool. Okay, so here we have a chart, a highlight table. We're showing a bunch of different dimensions and a bunch of different measures, right? And I know that this segment is related to the customer. It's like my customer segment. Category is my product category. And I might want to just be able to distinguish that a little bit and just call this customer segment, right? So if this were something I was doing on a measure, I could right click it to edit alias and just say number of orders like that, and I can alias it. But I can't do that with a dimension, right? Click there and there is no alias option. So here are some of the things that we typically or historically have done to fix this. One is we can just rename the field to customer segment. But I don't like doing that because it becomes a traceability issue. I know in my database, if I describe this, my remote column is segment. It's segment in my database, and now it's customer segment. It can be kind of hard to trace from their database through to your workbook like that. So I don't love that method. Another method you see often is duplicating the pill and then calling that one customer segment. And then we could use that up on the view here. And then that will use the name of the field. I don't love that either because we end up with all these duplicates of calculated of fields in our data. It just creates for a messy data source. So here's a cool little quick trick for doing that. If we double click on this pill and edit it inline, we'll do // then we'll type the text that we want to appear, customer segment. Then I'm going to hold on a Windows machine, at least, hold Shift and Enter. Basically just puts a carriage return line feed in there, right? So it just drops it down to the next line. And if we click off of there, it'll now use what I put behind the / as the name of the field, but it's still referring to that segment field and no extra pills or renamed pills here. So I think that's a pretty cool little trick. All right, so how many of you have ever, when we build tables, we try not to build tables because they aren't as visual as other types of charts, but you'll see with this example, when we do build tables, we try to at least do a highlight table, right? So you can at least see the big, the small, and large numbers. So sometimes you might want to create a highlight table that uses a discrete field on color. And if you've tried to do this, you know it can be a little bit problematic. So here we're showing segment versus subcategory and the profit ratios for each. So if what I want to do is have sort of two high values, like, very high or high and very high, and then low and very low, and then just sort of in the middle, and color each of those 5 groupings separate. So I might create a calculated field like this that just checks my profit ratio against those ranges that I want to specify and brings back, this string of text. And then I change my mark type to square, drag that field to color, increase the size, and you get this mess. So basically these marks are overlapping them, and I don't know how it determines what is on top and what's not, but this is obviously sort of useless at this point. So one historic solution is to create a numeric value of this. So it's the same calculated field, except we're returning numbers. And because they're numbers, we can use this as a continuous color. And because it's continuous, those boxes sort of stay at home. I'm not sure why it works like that with continuous and not discrete, but it is what it is, right? But I don't love this method because, I really want to change these colors. In particular, I want this middle color to be like a white or something different. And it's a diverging color palette. So in order to do that, I have to go create my own custom color palette, put in the preferences file, and that's just sort of a pain. I really want to be able to just individually change those different values. So here's one technique I learned a couple of years ago for doing that. We double click on columns and create an inline calculation. I'm just going to do double quotes, right? So it's just an empty string. Then I'm going to hold Control and copy this onto rows, right click this and hide the header. That'll hide both the headers. Okay, now when we drag that on there, they stay at home nicely. So that's historically been the way I do this. But notice when we have grand totals on here, it doesn't display them. So I discovered this on a client project not too long ago. So I had to find another method for doing this that would keep the subtotals. So let's get rid of these. Now we have our overlap problem. What I found is that I could create these calculated fields, empty one, and I just create two separate ones, empty one and empty two. And then I use those on rows and columns like this. I have to right click each of those and hide the header. But when I do that, it works perfectly. I get my highlight table as well as my totals, and the color, it works on the totals. So that works, but I just don't love all these extra pills. I think they're confusing and weird, and I just would like to have a better solution without doing that. And I think we have the best solution that's possible for this. Instead of a square mark type, what we're going to do is choose either bar or Gantt bar. Doesn't matter which one you choose. You'll just get a little sliver of bar. And then we just need to tell it using size, and we can mess with this all we want. All that does is increase the size of it. To control the size, we need to drop a pill on size. So what we're just going to do is create an inline calculation, just max one. We want these to all be the same size. We're going to drag that to size. It will fill in those squares. We can add a nice little gray border if we want. And now we have a super simple highlight table with just that one little trick of using that max of one. Okay, one last random trick. Here we have a chart showing sales by product name, and the product name is really long. And it's just takes up a lot of space. So one thing I might want to do is just take this label and put it on top of the bar. And by doing that, I can save at least this space here. So let's take product name, drag it onto label, and then let's hide this header. But now we have this overlap. See the text overlapping with my label at the end, and that's kind of yucky, right? So I click on label and I try to turn on the wrap, and no matter what I do, it doesn't wrap that text. I run into this all the time, and it's like, why doesn't wrap that text, even when there's a wrap option? Just doesn't work, right? So I found this handy regex calculation. Now, I do not understand regex. I do not understand what it's doing. I just Googled a lot and tested a bunch of things. And I found this regex that basically will count the number of characters I specified. So I put 30 in here. It's in there twice. And then go back and find the previous space, right? And then it just inserts these carriage return line feeds in there. So if I use that, it will break the string at basically at words with a max of 30 characters. And now we have this nice wrap text. If we wanted to take a little bit further, we could create a parameter and create a variable version of this. So we just use the max length parameter in there for the length. Just drag that on there. And now when we change this at 35, that max string, max line length goes up. And if we really wanted to get crazy, we could do some calculations with this number and the length of the bar and ratios and things like that to make this just wrap all the way to the end of the bar, which I think would be really cool. And I should probably do it instead of just talking about doing it on this presentation. Okay. I'm going to move on to, so those were some useful tips. I think a lot of them you will find uses. I use this discrete tip. The alias thing is nice. So those are really handy. But now let's talk about something that is very, very practical that you will deal with every single day working with Tableau, and that is the order of operations. So the order of operations is literally just the order in which things compute in Tableau. We start at the top. Very first thing that computes is extract filters, and then goes all the way down. The next thing is data source, context, all the way down to the bottom of trend lines and reference lines. So I recommend that you get accustomed to this, maybe even print it and put it on your wall, and make sure you understand it, right? Because when you run into problems with Tableau, you're probably gonna, it's a lot of times it's an order of operations issue, and you'll want to refer back to this. So let's look at some common problems that you might run into, things we see all the time, and let's talk about how the order of operations is impacting these. So one of the most common problems I see is when people first start using fixed level of detail calculations. So here we have a table showing our customers and their first order date. First order date is an LOD, just fixes on customer and gets the minimum order date. But we might want some more flexibility on this. So we added a filter for category, so that we can see the first order of each of the different categories that we select. But notice that when I change the filters, those dates are not changing. So this is a clue. This is an indication that there's probably some sort of order of operations issue. So let's take a look at what's going on here. We've got a fixed LOD here, the right there, and that computes at this level. And then our category filter is dimension filter. So the fixed LOD is computing first, and then the dimension filter. So what's happening is Tableau is looking at the entire data set. There's no filtering that's happened yet. It's taking the entire data set, grabbing that first order date, and only after that is it filtering out by category. So essentially, all it's going to do is remove people who didn't buy any of that category. It's not going to adjust that date. What we want to do is force that category filter to compute before the fixed LOD so that the fixed LOD will respect that filter. And to do that, we can change that dimension filter to a context filter. So to do that, we right-click that filter, choose Add to Context, and now you see as I change these values, it will update those first order dates. But be very wary of this when you're using fixed LODs. Second thing to be wary of it is when you're using top-end filters. So here we have a chart showing the top 15 customers by sales, and we've gotten the top 15 by doing a top 15 sum of sales on the customer name, right? So we're always going to show the top 15 customers. But in the same vein as last time, we might want to be able to filter that and look at the top 15 for specific years. So we have a filter on year, and watch what happens when I filter down to just 2021. When I do that, I no longer have a top 15. I know I have at least 15 customers. So that doesn't make sense. And my bottom number, these smaller numbers, they're just really small. There's no way my 12th biggest customer only has $270 of sales. So this, again, is another indication that there might be an order of operations problem here. Okay. So in this case, sorry, got distracted by my other screen. This, again, another indication that there might be an order of operations problem. So let's take a look at the order of operations. We've got our top end filter and then our dimension filter. See, the top end filter, just like the fixed LOD, computes before the dimension filter. So think about what's happening here. Tableau is looking at the entire data set, all the years, and getting your top 15 customers. It sort of comes back with a list of here's our top 15 customers. And then it's filtering by year. So it's taking that 15 and filtering those down to only those people that had sales in 2021. So 3 of those top 15 customers didn't buy anything in 2021. So that's why they're not showing here. Again, what we want to do is move that year dimension filter into a context filter. Let's do that. Add to context. And now we get a top 15 and more reasonable numbers. So 2 things to really, really watch out for are those top end filters and fixed LODs. When dealing with the order of operations. All right, I'll give you one more cool kind of tip. This is a little bit more hacky, maybe not as common a use case, but it is definitely a cool trick. So here we have a chart showing the cities and states and their sales, and we've got a rank. This is a table calculation. Here's the calculation, but this is a table calculation. Rank is a table calc. And that's controlling this ranking here. And I can see, I live in Pennsylvania, and I can see Philadelphia here is ranked number 5. And I do kind of wonder where the rest of these are, where the other Pennsylvania cities are. So I filter to Pennsylvania, and I see that my cities, but it re-ranks them. And there are some cases where you really just want to see the original rank. I want to see that this was 5 overall through the whole country. I want to see where Chester stood amongst the whole country. So I think, once again, we have an order of operations problem. So if we look at the order of operations, we see that filter on the state is a dimension filter, and then we've got our table count. So the dimension filter is cutting the data down to Pennsylvania and then doing the ranking. What we want to do is find a way to have that filter compute after the table calculation. And we can do that by making it a table calc filter. So here's a cool little technique that I learned from Pooja Gandhi many years ago. Table calculation, lookup is a table calculation that basically just goes forward or backwards in your row. You don't have to worry too much about it. But if we have an offset of 0, it's basically going to return the value, but the value will be a table calculation. And when we use it as a filter, it is, let's just come back to our order of operations, it's a table calc filter. Right? So we'll use this table calculation as a filter Now, if we select Pennsylvania from that list, you'll see it keeps those original ranks. Table calc does the ranking overall first, and then we filter it down to just Pennsylvania. So cool little technique. I do use this from time to time, and knowing it can really save you in some tricky situations. And with that, I am done. I'm going to pass it off to Kev.
And one more section to go. And since here I stole my cool random stuff, I should have renamed it something cool, but another cool random section. Assuming everybody can see my screen, Ken?
Yes. Yep.
All right, perfect. All right. Okay, so I showed this visual before, and when I showed it before, it looked like this. Okay, so what did I do to build this, and why is this different? All I am doing is a dual axis. I'm showing a circle mark for male and female, and then I've got a line behind here. So this kind of area behind it, it's just a line, right? It's just a line sized up. I want to make it so it sort of surrounds these circle marks like this, but I've got this line as large as it can go. How do I make it like that? How did I do that? One neat little trick when you want to make a mark bigger than what Tableau allows is if you type average of 1 or min of 1 or max of 1, anything like that, and just as an inline calculation, it's on detail now, and I drag it over to size, it'll allow me to make these things even bigger. So now I can size this down a little bit and get it exactly how I want it, just like in the image. So average of 1 on the view, and that'll allow you to get things a little bit bigger. Doesn't always work, works well. All right, so here we have a chart that looks at sales by subcategory, and I'm interested in looking at the return values as well. So I'm going to take this return calculation, throw it on color, and I can see that, okay, this red are the return values and the nose are the non-return values. I'd also be curious, and this may be tricky to see, but let's give it a try. I'd like to see the return values and the segment on color, like which segments, what are the returns by segment? So let's try segment on color as well. Well, it seems that segment has completely replaced return. Let's try that again. I'm gonna put return on color with segment. And what happens when you drag something to color, it only allows you to put one thing on color. So you could keep dragging these things to color and it's only going to give you 1. But there are, in fact, 3 different ways to add multiple pills to the color card. The first is we've got 1 already on there, returned. If I take segment and drag it to detail, then I can click here on this little icon, and that icon will allow me to change this to color. Now, I have both return value and segment on color, and we can see the orange ones are returns by the different segments, and the blue ones are the non-returns by the different segments. So that's one way you can do it. Another way is I can actually just press and hold the control key to select both of these. And while I'm holding the control key, drag them onto color, it'll do the same thing. Or the last one is to put 1 on there, and then if I grab segment and then press and hold the shift key, then I can drag it on there and it'll add a second pill to color. So 3 different ways to add multiple pills to the color card. Ken mentioned and showed my son's data, bowling data earlier, but this is the actual dashboard I created. They actually used this, the coach used this. But what this thing did is allow me to pick a bowler and it would highlight that bowler throughout. So you see my son Riley in red. And the only reason I use red is because it's the team colors, right? So it's not a bad thing. So it highlights him in red throughout the dashboard. Unfortunately, when I open this thing up, my parameter is broken, and this seems to happen quite often. I'm not sure why. So let me just edit this thing. Yeah, there's no list of values for some reason. Well, I have that list, so I can actually copy right from a spreadsheet if I want. So let's copy that list, and I'm just going to follow the instructions here. It says click to add, so I'm going to click there and hit Control V. And what happened? Well, if I hover over this, you'll see it took every name and jammed them all into one row here. So that's clearly not what I want. So if you're copying values from a spreadsheet into a parameter, the key component is to click anywhere except where it says click to add. So if I can click out here, out here, out here, but if you click to add, it's going to put it all in one row. So click anywhere except where it says click to add, then hit Control V, and it'll paste in that list for you. So just do not follow the instructions when pasting into a parameter. And by the way, yeah, now you can see that it allows me to select. Tooltips. I have this tooltip for this kind of crazy chart a bit a while ago. We hover over it. I'll see that I hate that tooltip. I tried to make it look nice by putting this little separator lines. Those are alt codes, by the way. I mentioned earlier, those lines are so that we don't get dashing. They actually run right through along each other. But the problem is when I put those in there, I kind of, the alignment gets messed up. Let me zoom into this so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. So we have this here where Ranger starts here. The values are all offset, and to make it more clear, it's kind of like that. I just think it makes this thing really hard to read. Right. So if we go back to the dashboard, we can fix that. So 2 little tips here. While you're on the dashboard, you don't have to go to that sheet to change its tooltip. All you have to do is select the sheet, go to worksheet tooltip, and you can change the tooltip right there. And then if we select this whole thing, we have this little slider, like it's a Word Perfect circa 1994. And I can slide this out, put it where I want, hit OK. And now we got the perfect alignment on this tooltip. And just to zoom in, the original before and after, we have that sort of jagged alignment. Here we have that nice alignment. It just makes things easier to read and look more professional for your end user. I bet we've all worked with containers and we all get frustrated with them. And what happens a lot of times is you get these extra containers you didn't intend to have in the first place. So in this case, I've got one big horizontal container, and then I've got 3 more horizontal containers. And then within each horizontal container, I have a single sheet. And to kind of clarify this, this light gray is this outer container. And then I've got these sort of unnecessary containers with only one sheet in them. I don't need these containers because it's just one sheet. So theoretically, I could just tile these 3 sheets inside this outer container. So if we want to get rid of them, I could go deleting stuff, but there's this cool little trick. If I move my cursor, we got the hand and we got the pointer, and then we get this double arrow right here between 2 different containers. If I right click there, sometimes it's hard to do. I'm going to try again. If I right click there, we get this option of combine layout containers. If I click this, boom, it combined those containers into a single one. Let's do it again. And when we do it on this one, it's just going to wipe out the whole thing because it's completely unnecessary. Boom, that whole layer of containers is completely gone just by using this weirdo combine layout containers. I'm just curious what it does here. Yeah, nothing. All right, last tip. I saw Kim's reaction on that one. So that's a good reaction. Thank you, Kim. She went. All right, last one, size. So I've got these, this is sort of a, I don't know, a company survey dashboard where we survey employees and they tell us what they thought about pay and about flexibility and probably a dozen other metrics, right? And so we just got this sort of KPI dashboard. They don't like their pay, but they like their flexibility. But I want to just modify this for whatever reason. I want to make this circle smaller. We're going to do it for both of them, right? And by the way, I just created this shape in PowerPoint. It's nothing fancy. So I just want to size this down a little bit. So let's size that down. And then let's do the exact same thing with this one, right? Okay, let's size that down. Shoot, those are not the same size. So let's bring this one back up a little bit. All right, okay, that's probably, nope, those aren't the same size. You could spend an hour, 2 hours, 5 hours trying to get these to the same size. And imagine if you had a dozen of them on screen. Yeah, it's impossible. So I'll show you a little trick. We're going to go to this published dashboard. This is on our Tableau Cloud site. I'm going to click edit. Once it loads, let's go to the sheet. And I'm going to go to the size card and watch this. Oh, there's a number there. What? There's a number there. So I can type in 30 here and go over to the flexibility one, go to size, type in 30. And if we go back to the dashboard now, they are, in fact, the exact same size because we just typed it in a number instead of a slider that only snaps to 25% and 50%. So a great use case for using web edit instead of Tableau desktop. That is it. Again, this is recorded, but also available on Salesforce Plus. All the blog and related content is flerlagetwins.com/coolstuff2024. If you got a Tableau conference next year, come see us. You know, that's always so much fun to do it in front of a live audience. So we'd love to see you there. And other than that, we thank you and happy to take questions if anybody has them. Lisa says, why is this not on desktop? I totally agree. I assume you mean the size thing.
Yes.
Yeah,
There's a lot of stuff on web edit that I don't understand why it's not on desktop, but especially that one. I feel like that's such a high need and would be
100%.
immensely valuable. I think you guys blew a lot of minds. Are there questions from anybody? Or I think everyone's just trying to pick their jaw up off the floor. Okay, well, hearing none, we just want to thank you both again so much for taking the time to come and blow our minds like this and share all these really cool tips and tricks. So thank you so much. Anything from anyone else? Just lots of thanks and gratitude in the chat.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, and happy Halloween.
Yes, happy Halloween.
Oh, there is one question. When is your next session? I don't know if that's for us or for the twins.
I'm assuming that's for you.
Our next
Oh,
meeting
for
is
the
December.
twins.
Oh, nope, that's for you.
Well, why
what
don't
do
you go
think?
ahead, Lisa?
I was gonna say our next meeting is December 4th. We'll give you more details on that at the end of the meeting.
Are we presenting publicly anytime soon, Ken? Let me look.
I don't. We might be.
No, we do
You're
not.
wrapped up for the year, Kev.
Yeah, yeah, we will not be presenting anytime soon. Probably not till 2024. So we did 2 of them today. So that was a way to finish off. So yeah. So
Well, this was a great swan song then.
Wrap
Yeah,
up.
TC 2025. We hope everyone will be there drinking brambles with you.
That would be awesome if we can find them.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you all again so much for joining us and spending your time with us. I think we all learned a lot.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
See ya.
Bye.
All right, I'm going to turn it over to Kim now. She's gonna follow that act. Go ahead, Kim. No pressure.
Thanks so much. The Flerlages, as I said in the chat, I've seen that presentation probably 3 or 4 times. And every single time, either I remember something cool that I didn't retain from the last time, or something else completely blows my mind. And I could think of about 5 or 6 use cases directly that I'm working on this week that will have a huge impact. Combining containers are my kryptonite. Super excited about that. Excuse me. It's never a party to try and follow the Flerlages. However, we did have a question come up as a part of our office hours that I wanted to make sure that we touched on before our session ended today. So let me share my screen. Okay. The question was about viz and tooltips. So frequently with our presentations and our sharing of data, we're challenged by the fact that we have a limited space and we want to try and provide all of the answers at one time. And the challenge is you want to give all the answers at the same time, but you also don't want to overwhelm your users. And the viz and tooltip goes a long way to help balance those 2 competing priorities. And so we wanted to do a quick, very rudimentary run through of how to do those in your own dashboards. So what do we mean when we say those? This is a mocked up dashboard that's talking about Halloween candy. We'll talk about its validity later. But in this dashboard, you've got a couple of charts, but there may be additional context that you may want to see. And when you hover over these, you can insert other tabs from your workbook so that it's not in the user's face the minute they open the dashboard, but if they want to seek additional information, that's available ready to hand, and it doesn't require a lot of clicking and waiting for processing time. And on this one, I've got a table inserted. Here, I've got images. Anything that you can put in a tab along the bottom of your workbook is something that you can insert into a dashboard view. So highly recommended as a trick to save both space and brain time for your end users. So how do we build them? It's relatively straightforward. You have to build two separate vises. You're not putting things in the same page from the outset. You start by building two separate vises. You have your main viz that's going to be on display in your dashboard, and then you're going to have your viz and tooltip that you're going to insert into that main viz. And you start, after you've built those two vises, you're going to go to your main viz tooltip window, open it up, and place your cursor where you want to insert the viz. And from there, you're going to go to Sheet, Insert, Sheets, and then you're going to see the list of sheets here on the right-hand side. These are going to be in alphabetical order, not your workbook order. So if you have a lot of worksheets, just bear in mind that you may have to do some scrolling. I like to label my inserted vises as VITs. That not only keeps them organized within this particular window, but when I'm looking at my workbook overall, it's easy for me to see very clearly and quickly which ones are my main views and which ones are the ones that I'm going to be later inserting. Okay, so let's try this in real life. Here is my practice dashboard, which is identical to the other one. This data comes from a super reliable scientific site called thecandystore.com, which is an online candy retailer that keeps track of the popularity of various candies sold for Halloween. They define popularity as number of pounds sold. So at the top, we have the heat map based on states. California leads the pack as far as that goes, with the top three candies for the state representing 3.6 million pounds of candy. Again, I have some questions about the data, and you will disagree with some of the other stuff, but that's neither here nor there. And then I've got, at the bottom, I've got a bar chart that has the total number of pounds sold for those top three based on the type of candy. And what I'd like to show in here is I'd like to show what proportion of each state is contributing to this total poundage. So I have my bar chart here, and then I have my viz and tooltip. And this is a simple table. It only has the state and the total number of pounds sold. When I go to my bar chart, I go to tooltip, I go to insert, zoom in so that it's a little easier to see, insert sheets. And this is, I believe, the candy via pounds for practice. That's the one I wanted. And it inserts a set of text, which I didn't want that there. I want that below my title. So you have to be real careful about where you put this. You click OK. And now when I hover, that is showing up in my view, which is really nice. I like to go through and check all of these and make sure that it's showing what I want it to show. But first, let me show you what it's actually doing. The code that you're seeing here, it starts with the name of your sheet. Between these two quotation marks is the name of your sheet. Theoretically, you can go in and edit this part and type in a different sheet name. I personally don't recommend doing that because Tableau is super picky about case sensitivity, spaces, underscores, etc. To me, it's just faster to delete the line and reinsert the sheet I want, but you do you. In the middle is something you definitely are going to want to adjust as necessary. These are the maximum dimensions of your tooltip. And you frequently will run into situations where you insert a viz that may exceed the dimensions of your existing tooltip. So in order to make sure that everything displays properly and that you're not missing any data, you want to make sure that these numbers accurately reflect what you're inserting, and we'll show you how to do that in just a moment. And then the last piece is the filtering option. Tableau is going to automatically filter to your lowest level of granularity that you have in your viz. Now, on my viz and tooltip, I didn't filter at the candy level. I'm only looking at the total state level. But when I put this into this particular view, it includes the name of the candy. So what Tableau is saying is, well, the name of the candy is the lowest level of granularity, so that's what we're going to be filtering by. So if I look at Skittles, and in the state of California, in total, we sold about 3 million pounds of candy. Here, they're just showing the Skittles, which is about 1.18 million pounds of candy. So it's automatically doing that filtering for us. As I said, I like to double check and make sure everything is appearing the way I want it to. And I see here with the M&Ms, there's a problem. Tableau at the bottom is telling me that the view is too large to show here. And I see that Vermont at the bottom is being cut off. So there's probably some adjustments that I need to do to my view. In order to make those adjustments, I go over to my tooltip, and I'm going to change that height to 450 to make sure I get everything in the view. 5, and I click OK. And now when I go up, the warning message about it being too big is gone. And not only do I see all of Vermont there, I also had 4 additional states that are now visible that weren't beforehand. So that's why we highly recommend, as you're doing these, double check and make sure that what you're presenting is actually showing everything in your view. So that's one example. Let's take a look at our heat map. Our heat map for that view, I like to, instead of having a table, which are relatively boring, and I don't have longitudinal data in this data set, I decided to go in and add a shape component to this and add the ability to see the actual candy view. I was able to get the different images for the different types of candies and throw them in as individual custom shapes. So I have that. And I'm going to, again, go in here and go tooltip. And insert sheets. Candy view. I think that's my candy view. Yes. Okay. And now when I go in, again, it's going to filter at this level. So we can see that saltwater taffy is the #2 candy in the state of Washington, which seems strange to me. Nothing against saltwater taffy, it just seems odd. But you can go through and look at the different states here, and we'll make this workbook available to play with as well. But let's say instead of at the state level, I wanted to go up a level and I wanted to look at it by region. So if I took region and threw that on here, so instead of the candies at the individual state, I want to see the candies for the whole region. In order to do this, I need to have regions somewhere in my view. So I'm going to take that, and for this case, just for explanation, I put color in here. But if you didn't want to change your color and you just wanted to put it in the viz somewhere, you can put it on detail and it'll have the same effect. But in my tooltip, I'm going to go and highlight all fields. That. And instead, I'm going to go to region. Click that, click OK. And now I get all of the candy for that particular region. So you can force Tableau, regardless of what the state is. If I want to change it back, I can either go back and type in all fields, or I can go in and type state or insert state, either way. Again, you have to be careful about case sensitivity and all that fun stuff. State. Okay. And now we go back to the top 3 per state. So these are just quick and easy ways to go through and make your tooltips more interactive. There are a number of different elements that you can use in terms of adding to these tooltips. Lisa and I, in the next page of I'm going to stop sharing, and I am going to, for a second, and I am going to ask Lisa, will you please go to the next page of the presentation? There are two really fantastic YouTube videos. There we go. That we'll have available, and I will copy and paste those in the chat in just a second. Tableau Tim, who, if you haven't seen him on YouTube, highly recommend. He has fantastic tutorial videos that walk through things similar to what the Flerlages do, and he gives a lot of really great detail for beginners on the tooltip side of the place. If you're ready to level up your skills, there was a fantastic presentation at TC19 that Lisa and I attended by a Tableau person who did some things in terms of maps and zooming in with tooltips that blew Lisa and my mind. It was really unreal. Highly recommend both of these videos. They're definitely worth a watch. So that was the quick and kind of fire hose presentation about Viz and tooltips. Does anybody have any questions? Oh, I did have one more thing. One more thing. As you are doing your Viz and tooltips, I had the Alaska and Hawaii there as well. You do not need to create separate Viz inserts. You can insert the same tab into multiple views. So you're not limited to having paired options there. So that was one thing. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step over somebody. Did somebody have a question? Okay, maybe not. Okay, well, with that, thank you so much. And I will turn it back over to Sam.
Thank you, Kim. And thank you. That was a really great presentation on Viz and tooltips. Yeah, I'm gonna have to use some of that. So yeah, what we have here is a feedback survey. Do I still have the link? Yeah, here's the link. I believe that's it. So that you can take that. It's a few questions, about 5 or 6 questions about both past and future meetings. So if you have a few minutes, please fill that out. It shouldn't take more than like 5 minutes. And then, so that's it for that. And then our next meeting it's actually Thursday, December 5th. I think we had changed it due to a meeting conflict. So yeah, Thursday, December 5th from 1 to 2:30. And we have Kevin Wee coming to present some stuff. I think he's doing something about his button presentation, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, it's buttons. We're talking about design and buttons.
Yes, design and button. Yeah, okay. And then we still have room for a Tableau showcase. So if you would like to present at one of our meeting or at this next meeting on Thursday, December 5th, please let us know in the form that, can we just go to the next slide, please? And so yes, if you fill out this form, you can let us know if you want to present anything, or you can also just send us an email. Any of our emails work, or we have a CCC TUG email as well that you can reach out to. And so, yeah, thank you so much for everybody that was able to come out today. And yeah, hope to see you at the next one. If you have any questions, please let us know too.